Chris Cuomo, and we have breaking news in a string of murders that haunted New York for decades. And now it may have been blown open. The Gilgo Beach murders. Today, accused serial killer Rex Heuermann had 2 more murders of women charged against him. Both were discovered dismembered just a few miles from where I live with my family. That makes 6 alleged killings against Heuermann. And now, 2 big questions loom. What did they find in Heuermann's house that led to these new charges? And could this be the man who's responsible not just for these murders, but more than a dozen unsolved cases of bodies dumped along a specific stretch of beach there on Long Island, Gilgo Beach, that have become the stuff of ghoulish local legend for decades? Let's get right to the courthouse for what police found that may be a literal roadmap to one of the country's most notorious unsolved killing sprees. NewsNation senior correspondent Laura Ingle was in the courtroom. Give us the skinny.
Hey, Chris. Well, this was definitely a very dramatic day in this case, with more people that we've seen in the courthouse lined up to go inside and watch these developments unfold than we have seen before. And of course, with 2 new victims, that meant 2 new sets of family members that we have seen lined up. You mentioned the victims. We're talking about 20-year-old Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. Taylor went missing in 2003, Castilla in 1993. So just by even knowing those 2 facts, this broadens out the investigation in that timeline that we have been talking about. 20-year-old Jessica Taylor was found dismembered in Manorville. She was lying on her back. Her headless body was missing her arms below her elbows. A tattoo she had on her torso had essentially been carved out, obliterated by a sharp object. This is according to the bail document revealed today. Her remains were found the same month her family reported her missing. Then we fast forward to 2011 when that huge search of Gilgo Beach along Ocean Parkway was taking place. That is when her skull and arms were later found near the victims of Gilgo Beach. Remember, the Gilgo 4 were among them, wrapped in burlap. This was a different story. These were body parts that were found. Also, in Suffolk County, in the North Sea area, the Castillo victim was found. That was back in 1993. And I know we're going to be hearing from some experts, but it basically all came down, Chris, to hairs and hard drives the investigators were able to connect Rex Heuermann with these allegations of these 2 additional victims, bringing this now to the total of 6. And as we moved through the day, there was a gasp in 2 courtrooms. This went so big that they actually needed to use 2 courtrooms to have so many people watch what was happening today. And there was a gasp when people started going through the bail document, which was almost 40 pages long, that included some of the things you mentioned. The lists that they found on the hard drive. These are things and items that were listed allegedly by Rex Heuermann that would help him get to his victims. So let's talk about what we have here. We're talking about a section that had pre-prep, prep, and post-event lists. Another section about how to prep bodies, washing the body inside and all of the cavities before disposable, removing trace evidence, fingerprints, removing ID marks, tattoos, removing marks from torture. Then there was another section, how to dispose of a body, including a shopping list of tools and devices, clothes and personal items, how to deal with the props and the toys, the wood items, and things to remember: to hit a face or neck next time harder, to get more sleep so that it would give him more, quote, playtime. And here you see the list of what he had that he listed for things to dispose of: burn gloves, a box of plastic bags to avoid trace, things to remember, get more sleep, more playtime. That is so very disturbing. And also, he talked about in this alleged list push pins to hang the drop cloths from a location where possibly he could have been doing bad things. And that is a disturbing detail because it said in the list, use push pins to hang the drop cloths, don't use tape. And remember, we showed you with our cameras, we were in front of his home, Rex Heuermann's home in Massapequa Park, where investigators for days just recently were going through and bringing out boxes and bags, large and small, mostly from the basement, from what we've been told. So it all ties together, and it paints a devastating story, if true, of what Rex Heuermann is accused of doing with these women. And one of the questions, Chris, that I've been hearing over and over again with the reporters that I have been covering this with for years is, how long did he keep these women alive? How long were they alive? All of these deaths happened when his wife, Asa Ellerup, was out of town. And each and every one, there is information about where she was. But how many trips did she take? That's another question people are asking today. How many more trips did she take that they are going to be able to match up? As you mentioned at the top, there are more victims in the Long Island serial killer case. We know that they are working through, the district attorney and his investigators are working through those devices, over 350 electronic devices pulled from Rex Heuermann's home and office and storage unit. They are going through it meticulously. And we got to say, we've been covering this case for a really long time, Chris, and you got to tip of the hat to Ray Tierney, because nobody knew these details. This was a complete shock and a total surprise today in court.
A lot of integrity in this investigation, and comes as a shock to us, but all we want is for them to do the job the right way, right? And that clearly seems to be happening. You and I have been doing this a long time. I've never seen a blueprint of a serial killer's intentions and habits the way you just laid out there. And of course, there's so much to process, but I did see on the list photos, film. I wonder if they found any photographic evidence, or, they're looking for that. And just how macabre it was for this guy to kind of figure out how long he could keep him alive. Now, the big question, Laura, is if this goes back to 93, we know that his wife wasn't with him at that time, but what about all these years since the main, number of Gilgo Beach murders? Did he just stop? So there's a lot here to process. Thank you so much for taking us through it. There'll be more to come, I suspect. Thank you very much. Now, let's bring in the man that Laura was just discussing, the district attorney for Suffolk County, Ray Tierney. Ray, what a day for the office in terms of, I know that Laura described it as a gasp, but these are murders. I don't have to tell you, you've lived it, but these are murders that have haunted the area that people thought they'd never get answers to. What does today mean in terms of where you believe you are in the investigation of the unknown cases?
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. I think today was, a big day because ever since we initially indicted the case, we said we were going to prosecute, investigate the Gilgo 4, and then once we charged those cases, we were going to move on to the other bodies on Gilgo and then off. And so what you see with Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla, you see that come to fruition. So these are allegations. We look forward to proving them in court, but we have been able to, move the case off of the Gilgo 4 and move it forward.
So help us understand, when there was that second massive search of the house, okay, it was confusing to the rest of us. It's like, well, wait a minute, didn't they do this already? What triggered you to go back in such large scale a second time?
Well, as we expanded the investigation and continued the investigation, different facts came to light, one of which was the planning document. So taking that information, we followed the evidence, and we took the necessary investigative steps. Those steps included doing the search out east with the canine units, as well as researching, doing a research of the defendant's house.
Describe to me how that document was discovered and how it was reacted to.
So, there's, as you said, well over 300 electronic devices that we have to search, many of which are encrypted, many of which are old, so you have to get the proper software. So we were going through that sort of meticulously, and this particular document was erased, so we had to get it out of unallocated space on the computer with forensic software. And once we were able to retrieve it and look at it, we knew that this was a significant document because it really evinces, our allegation is that it evinces the intent of the defendant to, in fact, commit the 6 murders.
Okay, so 2 questions. The 2 that are charged today, they were found dismembered. The other bodies weren't, and that leads to a suggestion that it is a different MO. It would be a different murderer. Why do you believe it's the same?
So just to make clear, Jessica Taylor was dismembered, her heads and her hands and her head, and Sandra Castilla was mutilated but not dismembered. So that's a little different. I do think that over a time, any criminal's modus operandi will change. And the other thing to keep in mind with regard to the Gilgo 4, when they were recovered, a lot of time had elapsed, so they were largely, if not completely, skeletonized. So we did not have as much information available to us with the Gilgo 4 as we did with Ms. Taylor and Ms. Castilla.
So New York law is a little peculiar. People are used to first-degree murder, meaning intentional murder. Here it's different. It's almost always public officials, peace officers, firefighters, but then the last provision is basically what people will know as felony murder, wherever they are. And you did charge that with some, but not all. And felony murder would mean that you believe this was part of a kidnapping, a sexual assault, and then he murdered them in furtherance of that crime. Why not with these 2?
So what we were able to charge with the murder 1 statute is if you commit more than 1 murder within a given time, 18 months, you could charge it as a murder 1 as opposed to the standard murdered second. So we have murders in 1 murder in charged murder in 1993, 2003, 2007, and then we have the 3 murders in 2009 and 2 in 2010. So with regard to those last 3 murders, we were able to charge the murder 1 statute because it happened so close in time. And those are the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello.
So, Ray, the really vexing question right now is, what do you think, Mr. District Attorney, he's been doing from 2014 until today?
Well, we more than think we've done with great investigators and great teamwork, we've been able to piece together a lot of information. So we don't talk about what we think, we talk about what we can prove. Up to now, this is what we have with regard to these 6 cases, these 6 allegations, which we look forward to proving. But we're just going to have to keep on working through the evidence, and then we'll speak through our indictments like we have since the very beginning.
Is there reasonable suspicion or probable cause at this point to believe that it is worth investigating if Rex Heuermann was active as a serial killer beyond these 6 victims, beyond 2014?
Oh, there is nothing, we said we were going to expand the investigation, and there's nothing off limits. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to investigate. We're going to continue to follow the evidence to its conclusion, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Is Heuermann giving any indication that he might talk?
He's represented through counsel, and we operate as we're required to do through his counsel. So again, we'll continue to do our job, and we won't worry about what he's doing.
My understanding is that there is no further involvement of the wife at this point in the investigation. Is that true? What has been made clear with regard to all 6 of the charged murders, that during the time of the commission of the murders as well as the disappearance, the family was out of town. So I think there's no evidence that there was any co-conspirators, and certainly it appears from all the evidence thus far that the defendant acted alone. Now, Ray, you have a great reputation, as you know, and the audience should know. I live in your county. But you're a very calm guy. How surprised are you on a personal level that cases that people thought were never going to be figured out are all of a sudden coming to light on your watch?
I'm not surprised at all. You're always, as investigators and prosecutors, you're always you're always optimistic. And I think if you bring really talented people together and you work together collaboratively with other agencies and other talented people, good things inevitably happen. So while, when I got into office, I had no idea. I was optimistic and hopeful that we would be able to bring some results.
But do you know that there are more open cases out there that he could be linked to, right?
There are a lot of open cases, not only in our jurisdiction, but in every jurisdiction. And, I think the way we work this, and everybody, talks about, well, is the Gilgo Task Force going to look at this murder? We do it through the auspices of these investigators, but we take each murder by itself, and we don't come with any preconceived notions or preconceptions. We just follow the evidence to its logical conclusion, and hopefully we get to the result where we can speak to an indictment.
Well, look, the more closure you can provide, the more communities can rest, the more families can finally have some peace with what happened to their loved ones. District Attorney Tierney, thank you very much for making time for us tonight, and we look forward to the rest of the investigation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Now, we're going to let the DA get back to work. I got to tell you, that's who you want as a district attorney, okay? Yeah, I mean, I live in his county, but no nonsense, no politics, no hype. He just has the job going. There's something, as macabre as this is, as morbid as it all is, there's also something refreshing and confidence building about that, isn't that? That guy is on the job. He didn't sell himself one bit. He didn't sell his team one bit, except that we're doing the job. Who knows how many cases they could connect to this guy, Rex Heuermann. Now, that leads us to our next question. Serial killers are a very unique animal within humanity or in humanity. Let's bring in forensic psychologist and visiting scholar at Boston College, Gary Briccato. It's good to have you, Gary. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I bet you share the same perspective, right? Ray Tierney is like from a bygone era of just the facts. He's got that Dragnet vibe to him, and it's refreshing, given how much hype we see with these guys being more politician than policeman these days. But
absolutely,
Rex Heuermann is winding up to be a real curveball to us. At first it seemed like, well, maybe this is not the kind of guy who's usually a serial killer.